Going live. Okay. Got no viewers, so I'm hoping we're on here. Anyway, my name is Matthew Hill, here with Kerry Baker, and we're here to kind of do a Q&A on Fort McClellan after the series we did, trying to help folks build up their case to show what they need to do to prove service connection for any disability related to Fort McClellan. One place we wanted to start is with some questions that came in that folks put in beforehand. And so I just want to go through a few of these. I don't know that we'll get to all of them. The first one is, will I just administrative, will I be able to obtain printed copies of the detailed outline in your Fort McClellan series? Obviously, the series will be up on YouTube on our channel, but the printed materials you should have gotten a link to today so that you can go from there. I'm looking at technical difficulties here. Are we on, Alan? Oh, there we are. Okay, we're on now. All right, so yes, those should have been emailed to you, those all of those materials, and if you'll see, there's 3 separate downloads. They are rather thorough. There's 2 that are from the environmental baseline study of the base, and then another one is a packet that we use that has evidence that we use for different clients depending on when they were there or what was going on. So you need to go through those. Again, there's a lot of information there, but each case is specific to your facts. So you have to pull out what was pertinent to your time when you were there. All right, so looking at other questions. Let's see. Was rainbow herbicides tested, used, and stored in '87? That's when I trained as a chemical specialist. Baseline survey in 98 stated building 598 stored Toradon 101, 2,4-D, to name a few. Since I had boots on the ground at Fort McClellan, could I be considered for presumptive service connection for my multiple myeloma? What do you say about that, Kerry?
I want to lay some groundwork, if I may. You asked about rainbow herbicides on Fort McClellan. Technically speaking, the answer is yes. Toradon 101 was Agent White, okay? But I don't want you guys or gals thinking about rainbow herbicides on Fort McClellan. I want you thinking about herbicide agents. It sounds silly, okay, but bear with me. Think about herbicide agents on Fort McClellan, because VA's regulation refers to herbicide agents. The statute refers to herbicide agents. VA's internal documents refer to herbicide agents. It's only Agent Orange or rainbow herbicides when talking in generalities. When you get down to the letter of the law, the whole presumptive list requires you to be exposed to a herbicide agent. Right? There's another section of the regulation that defines what a herbicide agent is, and that is 2,4-D, 2,4,5-T, and its contaminant TCDD, which is the dioxin, cocadylic acid, and picloram. Right? Picloram was the ingredient. One of the ingredients is Agent White. Agent White was a 4-to-1 mixture of 2,4-D and picloram, otherwise known as Toradon 101. Cocadylic acid was in Agent Blue, otherwise known as FIDAR 560 and Ansel 38. Those were the commercial names of them, if you will. And of course, then you have the 2,4-D and the 2,4,5-T. 2,4,5-T was the herbicide contaminated with dioxin, and all 2,4,5-T herbicides that were in existence were contaminated with dioxin. And all of those herbicides were banned finally in the middle 80s because they could not produce a batch that did not have any dioxin in it. So they could not get rid of it. Okay, it was banned much earlier than that for use in Vietnam, but it wasn't banned completely to the mid 80s. And most people aren't aware of that. So you need to go forward in your cases knowing what herbicide agents are, and that's what you need to prove exposure to. And we'll get into more questions and as to what VA is going to do with that. But that, you know, we need to have a unified front, and that's the legal and factual basis that we're working on these cases with, if that makes sense.
And as far as the question goes, being considered for the presumptive multiple myeloma, I did not see a date at which you were there. I think it's Ken, on base. But if you were, if you were on base, I won't give a date. If you're in base on 87 and you were out on the range or you were out doing maneuvers, I would say yes, you were exposed. And once you show you're exposed, and again, the materials we sent show maps of the base. It shows evidence in the form of foresters who were getting rid of foliage, talking about where, and you can figure out kind of when they were deforesting, and you can basically put those together and say, this is where I was exposed at these points. So yes, and so once you've done that, once you've shown that you were exposed, then if you were exposed to an herbicide agent, you are presumptively service connected for a series of different disabilities, one of which is multiple myeloma. So long way to get there, but yes, I think you have a good case. Okay, how does this affect advanced infantry trainees from January and February of 1967? Kerry, thoughts?
Yeah, so, and this probably will answer some additional questions as well. Some people have said, well, there's no proof of exposure or proof of herbicide use prior to 1974. So how do we win those kind of cases? And there is some validity to that. All right, but don't think that you're out of luck if you were there before 74. The reason 74 through 76 is sort of a sweet spot in all that is because we do have records of exactly what was used and how much of it was used in those years. But that does not whatsoever mean that it was only used in those years. That's just a piece of record that survived the ages. I have no doubt there's other records that may not have survived the ages, or we just haven't got our hands on yet, that, this stuff was used prior to, and we already know it was used after those dates. So for example, we have the forester statements. One of the forester statements was on base from the 1960 to 1987. And they talk about, using herbicides all over the place. Another one was interviewed in 1977, right? The interview took place in 77. And so he was speaking historically there on how they used 2,4,5-T and Tordon 101 and 2,4-D. We've got somebody submitted a patent or a request to patent this device that could measure the amount of defoliated jungle, and it was built for Vietnam. The two men that built it were from Fort McClellan, okay, and they put in for the patent in 1967. The patent was granted in 1970. Right, and they talk about testing both cocodilic acid, Agent Blue, and 2,4,5-T when they were developing this thing. Now, it doesn't say specifically that they were doing those tests on Fort McClellan, but I think it's logical to conclude that these guys were from there. This was where the chemical corps was. They were making this for Vietnam, and it paints a picture of the late 60s of this stuff being used just like it was in the mid 70s and after. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something on that list. Yes, I am. There's a 2012 Fort Detrick report that talks about, and this was in the late 50s, where they had plans to do massive pure agent trials at Avon Park, Florida, and Fort McClellan. Now we haven't dug up the records of those trials, okay, but there's nothing to indicate, the trials did not happen. But the point is, that's in the early or the late 50s, talking about herbicide test and talking about Fort McClellan as being one of the key locations. So in a nutshell, we know that herbicides were used prior to 1974. Can we say exactly the amount that was used like we can between 74 and 76? No. But I would not let that dissuade you from seeking benefits, because we are not letting it dissuade us from handling cases in those years.
And so I think it's important to recognize that unlike Agent Orange in Vietnam, where this, boots on the ground whole group was recognized as having been exposed, and they don't have to show that exposure. They just show what kind of disability they have. Here, you've got what Kerry just discussed, all that circumstantial evidence previous to 1974. And what you have to do is you kind of have to put yourself in the middle of that. Okay, all that was going on, and how I would put myself in, or I would put my client in the middle of that, is have a very strong statement, meaning you are competent to offer what you saw, what you heard, what you smelt, differences in one area that was very green, one area that's very brown. So you need to write out a statement showing all that, hey, this is where I was on the base, this is how long I was there, this is what I noticed, throughout the whole base or different areas of the base. So it's important for you to really inject yourself into that. All the evidence Kerry has shows that this happened probably, but it's all circumstantial. And so you got to bring it together with your statement to show, hey, this is where I was, and this is what I saw. And oh, by the way, look at all these other things that were going on, a year prior, 10 years prior to me being there. So just remember, with the evidence we gave you, and I think there's probably 800, I don't know, maybe close to, 900 pages of evidence. That's not carte blanche. I mean, you don't need all of that evidence. You just need to find what pertains to the years you were there. If you're after 74, 76, there's plenty of evidence there. If you're there beforehand, there's other evidence that Kerry just alluded to. But this is still your case. It's not like a big group of guys saying, hey, this is, I was on Fort McClellan, I should get benefits now. We're not there yet, unfortunately. Congress has not had the gumption to pass a law to that effect yet. Sorry, I cut you off, Kerry.
No. If you don't remember what you saw, okay, because it's logical. If you're there in the 60s or early 70s, you don't remember dead vegetation and all that. Well, what did you do, right? Because most people that we've run into were there for boot camp, MP school, the chemical school, and obviously that's not the only reason people were there, but those are the majority. The people there short periods of time were probably there for boot camp. So what do you do in boot camp? You do land nav, you crawl through nasty things, you go to the rifle range. So even if you don't know what you saw, you know what you did, and you can make a statement as to, where's the rifle range? Did you go to Pelham Range? There's ranges all over that place. And wherever there was foliage and troops, there was likely herbicide use from what we can tell. So just keep that in mind. And I can add to what Matt was saying. We're going to answer all these questions as if, we hope we know what the ultimate outcome here is going to be, but VA is fighting this. VA will deny these claims. They're going to deny them on your, if you're on your own, they're going to deny them if you're with us. And so just keep that in mind. These are hard claims. Expect a denial. Don't be disappointed, and do not give up. Keep it on appeal. And anyway, I don't want to get on a soapbox there, but
No, that's what we found. I mean, in these cases, VA hates presumptions. I think they hate toxic exposure cases personally, but we have found that the only way to win is to keep on going up the ladder. And even if we get denied, the Board of Veterans Appeals, we take it up to the Veterans Court. And we do win these cases, but as Kerry said, we fully expect it to be denied all the way up in the VA, just because it's almost as a rule they hate these cases. So,
and we'll explain why that is in other questions as well.
Okay, let's see here. You were saying the folks there, I thought this was interesting. Where did this go? Oh, shoot. There was something. Okay, well, I'm going to look for this one, but let me see. I have a case on appeal to the BVA. Where do I get the archive evidence from? Do I have to request it from the archives? Is it posted somewhere? In case folks just got on, you should have had sent to you all the evidence that we have. We've discussed over the last, whatever it's been, 5 videos. It's a lot of evidence, and that's what I was kind of saying, is that you need to kind of sift through and use what was pertinent to you when you were there and what you were doing. But that would be where I would look for that evidence. All right, so Kerry, this is the other one as far as who was there. You talk a lot about specific years of toxic exposure. What about women veterans who trained at Fort McClellan? I was there 70, 71 and have been diagnosed with multiple issues related to this exposure. Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. Because the Women's Army Corps Fort McClellan was the home to the Women's Army Corps, was another one of its large missions. As far as the exposure goes and the disabilities that result from those exposures, no different than men. Okay, if a woman, if VA concedes a woman was exposed and that woman gets a disability that's on VA's presumptive list, we would handle it no different than we would handle a male veteran's case. The only difference that I can think of that comes into play is if one, VA concedes you are exposed, and they would have to do this first, and you have children that have certain disabilities. And this goes back to Vietnam. So most people know that served in Vietnam, if their child has spina bifida, then that child can potentially get benefits from VA, because they know if the father was exposed to herbicides and the child is born with spina bifida, there's a link there, and that's in VA's regulations. But what most people don't know is that if a female veteran was exposed, that list is a lot longer. Don't ask me to name what's on that list. I couldn't off the top of my head, but there's a whole list of disabilities that if a child of a female veteran was exposed to herbicides, there might be additional benefits there. But apart from that, it's identical.
All right, so being a vet with stage 4 prostate cancer, fibromyalgia, headaches, and other issues, can they be tied back to time served there in the time frames of 86 to 93, intermittent time at station? I mean, to me, the easy one is that you can prove that you were exposed. The prostate cancer would be presumptively granted. The other issues, the fibromyalgia, headaches, and whatever else you might have, those issues you would have to get a nexus. You'd have to get a doctor to say, hey, you were exposed to this. This could be something that causes the headaches or causes fibromyalgia. So those are a little, those take another step. But the prostate, once you show that you're exposed, you're good to go there. Okay, I'm a male with thyroidecotomy due to cancer in the year 2005. I served in Fort McClellan at basic and AIT for a total of 7 months in 86 due to getting hospitalized for illness. Can I still put in a claim even though it's been so long? Yes. Kerry, I mean, it doesn't matter. You can be a World War II vet right now and put in a claim even if you never have, or a Korean vet. So time does not matter, thankfully. There's no statute of limitations. This is, can it be a little harder that it's farther away? In some cases, yeah. But in this case, what happened on the base happened on the base, and that hasn't changed. Let's see. I submitted a claim for 2 cancers due to herbicides at the fort back in 2016. It was denied. I did not appeal. Can I reopen the claim with this new evidence and still have my original claim date? There's a couple issues tied in there, Kerry. What's going on?
Yeah, that question's loaded in more ways than one. First, yes, you can use this evidence that we're giving you to reopen your case. All right. Can it go back to the original date? I would go forth with your claim expecting that it would not. Okay. But that does not mean that there's no way to do it. This gets a little nuanced. There's case law and regulations out there that talk about if, and this is just one example, if VA obtained service records that were in existence in the prior claim and they didn't get those, they can be used to get VA to reconsider the original claim. Now, typically that's referring to someone's own personal medical records, service personnel records. Does that mean, some of this information that we have that we're sharing, that question will be up in the air depending on how this whole thing goes, as to do any of these records count as the type of service records that the regulation contemplates, that you could use for an earlier effective date. What would you add to that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, if, again, it's 800 something pages that we dropped today for y'all to look through. Some of those are service records, and some of those I would fight hard for, to say that those are service records of VA and their duty to assist. They failed their duty. Well, forget about duty to assist. They did not connect those or put those in your file when you first filed. And I would say that with those records, they're relevant to proving your claim. And once you prove them, it should go all the way back. But as Kerry says, it is a hard case, but to me, I would fight it. But back to, I think the most important thing that Kerry said is, you want to get benefits here and now. Okay, you want to get those benefits with this claim, get that ongoing check, get the health care priority. Okay, so you don't, I look at a retroactive opinion, or it's not a claim, but an appeal, as, in a way, gravy. If I have the correct rating, and I have the correct things rated, then I'm looking at that as gravy, trying to go back that far. Okay, so let's see. Does your firm plan on seeking direct compensation from the government? So this is a little, I'm going to have to kind of guess on this. We don't, in cases before the VA, we only get paid if the veteran gets paid, and it's the veteran that pays us. Getting direct compensation for the government, if you're at the Veterans Court, the government will pay you if you win. The government will pay the attorney if they win. So we would basically, when we take cases, we hope they're cases we can win, and then once the veteran wins, we take a percentage of that retro payment, not anything of the ongoing payment. So we don't look for direct compensation from the government.
Can I add something to that, Matt?
Oh yeah.
I took that question and I'm guessing as well, are we suing the government? Are we, is this like a class action where we're going to get paid a big chunk of money by the government? And no, in a nutshell, like I said, we handle individual veterans cases. This is not about a big class action lawsuit.
And yeah,
not that it could not be, but it's not what we're doing.
Right. And that's hard. Basically, they made, after the Niemer case, which was the Agent Orange case that came down, they locked it down pretty good. VA did, as far as being able to bring a class action either within the VA or at a federal court on starting it. So, and a similar question: can I sign up? Do we have to sign up to be part of any lawsuit? You need to pursue your own case. Here's the bifurcated approach that I would consider. One, you put in a claim for your own case, you get the evidence you need, you fight like hell to win that case. Two, you get hold of your congressman. Kerry and I have been, on the side working with other groups trying to get legislation put together just on Fort Mac. There's all kinds of other things, but we think the best evidence of horrendous toxic exposure out there is Fort Mac. So that's kind of the other vein. There's no big grand lawsuit, but if a law can be passed, that would help thousands, tens of thousands of vets.
And my take on some of that too is, if we get no law, but we finally win, say at the Veterans Court, on the evidence, and I think we have a shot at this. All the other issues, blue water, C-123s, they've been done with political pressure and that type of stuff, without a whole lot of evidence. And that's not knocking those particular veterans. We have the evidence here, and so a win on the evidence would be just a sweet victory. I'm just giving you my opinion. It's a clean victory that I don't think anybody can take away from us. And I think VA is aware part of that. I was going to say this, but something you were saying earlier, Matt. So the environmental baseline survey, right? When VA finally posted something about Fort McClellan on its public health website, it had the environmental baseline survey on there as an attachment that you could go read and open up and download and all that. And it's still got some documents on there. But when we started all these claims a few years ago, and I guess VA got wind of what was in the document,
They actually read what they posted.
they took that one document off, and that's the document. The baseline survey was a document that had the herbicides that were sprayed from 74 to 76, as well as what was on hand after that. And I just find it interesting that they removed that one document from their website.
And that is part 1 and part 2 of that document are in the download. So those are, as he said, definitely worth looking at. Okay, let's see. Let's jump to what we have here on live action. We got Roger D. I have neuropathy, but I do not have diabetes. Does the chemicals from Fort McClellan have anything to do with that possibly? I trained there in 82, 83 as an MP. So we see this in Vietnam vets all the time. The answer is yes. It depends on the type of neuropathy you have, but you don't have to have diabetes to have neuropathy. The problem, I won't say the problem, but the challenge is it's not a presumptive disability as you have described it. Okay, so you're gonna, again, first we got to show that you're exposed to these herbicide agents at Fort McClellan, and then you're going to need a doctor to say that those toxins actually caused the neuropathy. Any thoughts on that, Kerry?
No, not beyond what you said.
Okay, we're getting a lot of folks who are, so it's that time. Went to school at Fort McClellan, January, March, 89, U.S. Marine Corps, NBC specialist. Can I be service connected for multiple myeloma? Well, I don't think any Marine should be service connected, Kerry. I don't know about you.
I suspect something's wrong with the question, because I it's my opinion that Marines are immune to multiple myeloma.
Kerry's immune to a lot of stuff being a former Marine, but go on.
Yeah, I'm a Marine, so no, we're not immune, unfortunately. But yes, you could. Again, it's all about getting VA to concede that you were exposed to the agents that we're talking about. And if they did that, it wouldn't matter if you served in 95 or 65. You could still get service connection. Again, I stress, it's not going to be easy. In fact, it's going to be damn hard. Keep that in mind. And you might not want to do it yourself, or you may want to take it to a certain level and then hand it off to somebody else. And that's not me trying to get business, because we've got a lot of it. But just keep that in mind. This video is not about, hey, there's a very easy way to get benefits, guys. This is about a very hard way to get it, but we think it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's about you deserve the benefits, but you need to know this is not a walk in the park. The VA is just going to deny you to try to get you to go away. And that's what we see. And, as far as what Kerry's saying, I mean, we know you can win. And that's why when we take a case, we're taking it and we're going to try to take it. We will take it as far as we can, because the VA's best defense in cases like these is just to deny and see if you'll go away. Okay. Oh, and then, well, it's that time, same again, said Fort McClellan training, nuclear, biological, chemical warfare specialist. In the Marines, MOS is 5711. I think we talked about this on our video series, but to me, it bears repeating. The chemical school was there, and I think it's important for folks to understand. Most people, when they apply for benefits for exposure at the Fort McClellan, they're saying, or they're thinking that they were exposed because of some chemical leak or chemical exposure on the range. And I've thought a lot about this. It's not that we just don't think that's what happened. It's that we've never seen evidence that can prove that happened to a vet and therefore get the vet service connected. On the other hand, we found a lot of evidence with the herbicide agents. And that's why we try to direct folks, to direct veterans to focus on that and not just think about what could have happened or could have leaked from the chemical school. So just something that's our opinion. I mean, we know there's some groups out there and individuals who strongly believe that anything that happened to them was caused by some chemical exposure there, and they might have evidence to prove that. We, in the studies, the reviews, and the paper chases we've done, have just never seen that. So it's just kind of where we are. All right. Let's see here. How does the Monsanto issue play into exposure at Fort McClellan from 1970 to 1997? Wow, that's a long time, Linda. I mean, I've got some legal thoughts, but Kerry, you got any thoughts?
Well, if you said 1970,
70 to 97.
all right. Well, the Monsanto plant, I think, was there from like 1917 to like maybe 1970 something. But it's in the material. As far as the specific topic we're referring to on herbicides, it doesn't really play a role in that. I know people are going to disagree with me on this, but hear me out. If you can show exposure to herbicides and you have a herbicide related disability, all right, that's the end of the story on those specific things. That does not mean that's the end of the story altogether, because a lot of people out there have disabilities that are not a herbicide related disability. And we're certainly not trying to dissuade people from filing claims for those. You're going to have a harder fight. But were these the only exposures? Sure, like Matt said, we know there are others. And the biggest one, the 800-pound gorilla sort of in the room, are all the PCBs from the Monsanto plant. I think I saw somebody talk about that. Well, that they weren't on the base. Well, they were airborne. And so to the point where they were detected in tree bark at the base perimeter. They didn't test trees on the base. They didn't test soil on the base. So yeah, they were on the base because they were airborne. That's how much Monsanto was poisoning the environment. They just weren't in the soil and water. So were you likely exposed to PCBs? Yeah, you probably were. To the extent that you can show a disability related to that becomes a claim like any other kind of claim. It would just be a direct service connection claim. So yeah, those can play into the cases. Just depends on the disability. Probably when you were there, the PCBs aren't going to be as high in the 1990s as they were in the 70s. That might affect a medical opinion. I don't know about that for sure, but that's how I would use the PCBs.
Okay, there was an administrative note. Alan and Ephraim, if you saw this, Dutchy Robinson said was unable to download the last 4 videos. If that's the case, there's an email on here you can email just to let us know, and then hopefully you can get that information there. Let's see. And folks, so overall, I apologize if I didn't say this earlier. These questions are dedicated just to the Fort McClellan issues. I see quite a few other ones that are outside of that. I will be back next Wednesday, I believe, with Carol Ponton, and we can discuss anything and everything. But today we just want to keep it on this for the folks who had the questions after the videos that they saw and the documents they got. All right, let's see. I'm seeing a lot of notes, but not a lot of questions. Okay, so HOJO, 965 was at the MP school in 79. They used to make us low crawl, dragging our face in the dirt, going to the gas chamber near them chemical school storage facilities. So again, I would say, could you have been exposed to a chemical? Surely. that could happen there. But as Kerry said earlier, if you're dragging your face in the dirt somewhere in the facility, you're also most likely getting exposed to what's in the soil, and that's where these herbicide agents end up. They come down and they end up in the soil. So if you literally have your nose in that, I think it was much more likely that would be what you're exposed to, and that's probably what you want to, hang your hat on or really focus your claim on. Kerry, you got any thoughts on that one?
No, absolutely. We know the soil was contaminated. They were still measuring dioxin in the soil in the late 90s. So when you were there earlier, it would have just been most likely at a higher rate. And so something to keep in mind.
Okay, Zetchi Robinson, I've seen a lot of just kind of random comments, not so much a question, but I think this is important. You said you went to Pelham Range in the bivouac at night time, laid on the range itself. So there is clear evidence that they were using this on the range. If you look in, I forget which of the downloads it is. I think there's one download that's about 120 something pages. That one has evidence that Kerry had alluded to earlier from the foresters, talking about what they used and where. And the range was one of the main places where they wanted all the foliage cleared and out of the way. And so if you're hanging out there, in my opinion, you're most likely very much exposed. So there's maps in there showing what was where. There's that statement. I mean, it's the statement alone from the forester, I think, says he uses, I don't know if he said he uses Toradon 101, but he says he uses, yeah. So I think you're looking good there. Okay, I was at Kevin. I was at Fort Mac 86 and 88, also at Schofield Barracks from 75 to 78, drinking water with the same chemical as Camp Lejeune, TCH. Schofield Barracks has no presumptive exposure, but was a Superfund site. I guess one of the things I'd say there is if you look on our website, and E, if you could bring this up, we actually have a map that shows all of the known bases that had significant toxic issues, several of which ended up into Superfund sites. So I would look on that to see because it'll show you what was there and what that toxin actually can cause in terms of disabilities or diseases. So I would look there. I'm not sure, you didn't really say where you were in Fort Mac, but if you're there in 86, 80, 88, the exposure had already taken place. Let's see. Okay. Jerome Givens, I was at Fort Mac from 80 to 81. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Again, as we said, that's you prove that you were exposed, then that's a direct service connection, or excuse me, presumptive service connection for a herbicide agent. Okay, Linda, I was awarded service connection for autoimmune disorder by the VA, but no compensation. So I imagine that just means you got a 0% rating. If you were already awarded for that, that's good news because they've admitted that it's related to service. Now you just need to go read the diagnostic codes, and we will put that in here in the notes as well, and figure out what is your specific autoimmune disorder and what symptomatology do you have. For a 0% rating, what does that say? What is it for 10? What is it for 30 or whatever else? So you would want to work your way up there. But if you're already awarded, that's the good news, because everybody else here we're talking about is actually getting that service connected. Okay, Hojo 965 again. Is it beneficial to initiate the claim through you guys, or do I need to start the claim on my own, then move up to my state VA VSO reps? Kerry?
It's a good question. I would say this: if you're going to initiate it, typically we start at the appellate stage, but that doesn't mean we have to start this appellate stage. Can we take a case and file an initial claim? Yes, if that's within the firm's, individual policies that we've set, sure. Um, I would, if we took a case, I would hope that you would stick with us on the case and let us stick with the case, rather than just filing an initial claim. It's like we said, we're confident, regardless of what we give VA up front, regardless of how good we make the case up front, the people up front rating the case are not going to get it. And that's not a dig on them. They're just trained not to, almost. And so we're going to initiate an appeal, and we're going to, it's a long fight. It's the long game, if you will. So, should you go with us? Should you not? If you want to try this on your own, this is why I think Matt's alluding to on a number of things. That is why we're putting this information out there for you. So if you don't want to hire a law firm, it's there for you. But at some point, are you going to need somebody like us? Most likely. These things are difficult to put together at the Board of Veterans Appeals, and much more difficult at the court. And that's where we think most of these cases are probably going. It's a hard fight at that level if you're doing it on your own. If you want to start locally on your own, I would say we're giving you more information here than you're going to get anywhere else. I don't think the VSOs are going to have this information, nor know how to put it together. Could they file the claim for you? Sure. If they deny it, should you stick with them? I might cross a line when I dig on VSOs. But my personal opinion is, I'm not speaking for the firm, is no. No, these cases are over their head. Again, that is my personal opinion. Matt might fire me and never let me do another video.
We all got our opinions, and he was a VSO, so I don't know what that I don't know where it goes from there. But what I would say, I'd like to be a little more optimistic. This claim, this issue of Fort McClellan, the VA used to be able to hide it under a bushel and not let it see the light of day. But more and more of these claims are getting filed. More and more veterans know the information to prove their claim. More and more veterans are sophisticated. So I would like to think you do file your own claim, or you get a VSO to file a claim, but you make sure the evidence you want is in there. And my thought is, at some point, they're going to have to start granting these things. And once they do, you don't need to pay an attorney for that. That's kind of how I look at it. And so I would strongly consider doing that. So, and then you get up to the appeal. I'm totally with Kerry. If they're going to deny you once, you gave them that chance, and then at that point, you probably got to get an attorney. And I would make sure that we aren't the only ones who do this, do Fort McClellan cases. But if you talk to somebody, you definitely want to ask them, have you ever won one of these cases before? Because it's tricky and there's a lot going on. So my opinion would be, don't hire an attorney at first, but if you, as Kerry said, you start getting up that appellate level, you're going to need some more sophistication. You're going to need somebody to address the nuances of your cases and put it into the evidence that we've given you. Okay, you're not fired, Kerry. Okay. So Hocho 965, I was advised that my doctor would have to word it. This is hard. Always a tongue twister. To word it, it is as likely as not that the issue is caused from exposure at Fort McClellan. Is that the correct wording? So that phrase is correct, and the exposure at Fort McClellan, I guess you could say, is correct, but you need to be more specific. You need to say exposure to what? Exposure to sand, exposure to sunlight. You got to say, what was the exposure and how does that exposure relate to your current disability? Okay, so that little phrase is key, but it needs to be surrounded by substance. Okay, but if you've got a doctor looking to help you, that's great, because it's hard to find docs who will go to bat for this.
Can I add something to that, Matt? Exposure also, just whatever it may be, to herbicide agents or to anything else, is a factual finding that's within the realm of the fact finder, which is the decision maker. So I'm saying that because I don't want you having false hope that if you get a medical opinion, that's it, you're going to win the case. That's going to help, but VA can still deny the case by saying you haven't shown us that you were exposed. yeah, we got an opinion that says if you were exposed, it would have caused this, but keep that in mind. I wouldn't go spending a lot of money on medical opinions, you know, when your goal is getting the VA to concede the exposure.
Right. And I mean, this is somewhat of an aside. In the majority of cases we handle, I found that if we submit a new claim and submit an outside exam or an exam from the doctor with it, uh, the VA will look at it and say, oh, well, that's nice. I'm going to go ahead and go get a CMP exam now. So, my thought has always been let them get the CMP exam first. Let your doctor review that and not only say what the doctor is going to say, but then also critique what was wrong with the CMP exam. But that's cart before the horse, as Kerry was saying. You got to show the exposure first. Let's see. Do you have other YouTube videos about Fort McClellan? Uh, it's that time. We actually do. I think there is a link up above somewhere that goes to those videos that you could watch. Oh, there's a link right below it. Sorry. KY. I still have a yearbook from the time I was at Fort Mac. How would I use this to prove exposure? That's pretty fascinating. What,
Well, I've seen some of those yearbooks, and I've seen pictures of, people low crawling through the mud and doing land nav training and all kinds of pictures of what you would be training on a military base in some form of boot camp or AIT school. I think those pictures could show that, yeah, it was typical to be in those environments and be, as I like to say, intimate with your environment. And he can help you, because that's the statement Matt was describing earlier. You want to show VA that you were intimate with your environment. Those pictures can help that. If you have a yearbook that's got pictures of some of the chemicals, the herbicides or something, we would very much like to see that. So share with us as we're sharing with you, but I haven't seen any that has those types of pictures yet.
yeah, well, I mean, to me, if it's color, I would be interested to see, can you literally see the difference in different areas of the base? I mean, when you go out to the range, is it dead? I mean, is everything brown? Is it lush in other areas? Yeah, okay, well, I think you got, I think that's fascinating. I don't know how much the photographers are actually going out and showing the base, but that could be very compelling evidence.
And something else to piggyback on that, if there's areas where the military used massive amounts of herbicide, all right, even years later, you're going to have foliage growing there, but it might not be as healthy as somewhere that's never been sprayed with some of these defoliants. So it might look different, and I'm not the environmental expert to tell you, yeah, that's a sign of herbicide damage, but there are experts out there that can do just that to some degree. So keep that in mind.
And just to kind of note again, as far as questions, if it looks like I'm skipping some of your questions, we're focusing just on the Fort McClellan issue. This was kind of the ending of a series that we did on this. And so I know there's other questions here. Please come back next Wednesday. That's just a wide open Q&A where anything and everything goes. Let's see. Where was the other? Let's see. Linda said, "Thank you for bringing Fort Mac to light. I will be contacting y'all soon." Linda, we are very excited about this issue. This is something Kerry in particular has been working on for years, and just seeing the momentum coming and vets getting the benefits they deserve from Fort Mac is it's rewarding. It's just it's not timely. It should have happened a while ago, but it is rewarding. Let's see. I have a rating for degenerative disc disease and hearing and receive benefits. Would a Fort Mac claim be a new one or amendment to my original? Gary?
Well, if you have a claim that's pending, any which means you've already filed it, and this I don't think this answer is specific to Fort Mac. if you've already filed a claim and that's pending, you file another claim, that's a new claim. Okay, so Fort Mac in that scenario would be a new claim. But that same thing goes for if you filed, if they denied your current claim, if it's still pending, and you come back and file another claim for the same thing, that's a new claim. So yes, it's a new claim, but can you do it? Sure, absolutely. You can have tons of claims because lots of people do.
All right, my VA doc will agree with me that my cancers were chemically exposure related. CML and stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. Are those on the VA presumptive list of illnesses? Thanks for doing this live. I'm gonna let Kerry answer that, but first, when you say presumptive, we're talking about herbicide agent presumptive. Kerry, you got CML and Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Hodgkin's is definitely on there. CML is not. That's chronic myelogenous leukemia, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that was my understanding too. I won a couple of these cases, but it was before, I think it was before the 2010 reg change, and I couldn't remember what B cell lymphomas. But anyway, you can win that. Okay, the fact that you have a doctor, a VA doctor going to bat, you need to pat that guy on the back. Maybe not in the time of Corona, but at least give him a little applause, because that's phenomenal. Most VA doctors will not come within 10 yards of helping a vet on their benefits claim, so that's great. So the Hodgkin's, if you can show exposure, doesn't need to write about that. Boom, that's presumptive. But the CML, they'd have to discuss, the toxins and how it's related to that. To the CML, and you can win. As Kerry would tell you, you would not win that on the initial. You probably have to go to the board. One of the advantages of going to the board is not only have a seasoned adjudicator, you have an attorney that understands they have to use the law the correct way, and you don't always get that at the lower levels. Okay, Bugsy, tell us about the National Archives trip. Kerry, that's all you. I envisioned him being there, him and his crew being there with all these boxes lined up where everything looked the same, like in Indiana Jones, where they hid the Ark of the Covenant. But sorry, go ahead. Give us a short little backstory on that.
Yeah, I kind of envisioned that too, but it didn't turn out that way. And I hate to say, we really got the hang of it about on day 4, maybe the end of day 3, and we had to leave on day 5. So it probably deserves another trip if they ever open up. We were there looking for a number of things, not just Fort McClellan. And we didn't, searching Fort McClellan at the archives was difficult because a lot of records are stored by units, or you just can't go there and say, hey, give me all your records on Fort McClellan. They're going to say, well, sorry, it doesn't really work that way. They're going to drill down to the unit level, and you're going to have lots of records that have nothing whatsoever to do with what you're there for. That it's just not pertinent. So that makes it difficult. We look for a lot of records on herbicides in general. Just the whole herbicide program, because typically you find a lot of good records in a group like that is going to apply to somewhere other than just Vietnam. They're going to tell you where it's made, where it's tested, so we were hoping to find a lot of stuff like that. And what we found is a lot of the stuff, even though it was there in the building, we couldn't get our hands on it because the owner, which is not the archives, right? The owner just houses it, or the archives just houses it. It still belongs to whoever gave it to the archives. They marked them as FOIA only, or official use only, which means you'd have to do a FOIA, which you can't do while you're sitting there at the archives for some reason. And so we couldn't get our hands on a lot of records we wanted to look at. And somebody I think had mentioned, what's the status of the FOIA? we haven't done FOIAs for a lot of that stuff. Could we? Sure, we might. But the stuff that we got on Fort McClellan, we were able to find. We didn't need to FOIA that, but it was a small amount of stuff, but still very important in my opinion. I don't know that I'm answering your question.
It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't an easy, good old trip. First, real quick, Kevin Mueller, he's the one with the doctor who agreed to the doctor's going to do a nexus statement. He corrected me. The doctor is a she. That makes a lot more sense. I mean, I've just seen a lot more female doctors go to bat for their vets. So good, good on you. One thing that we did not discuss, and it is in the documents, it's a little discombobulating, and that what Kerry was just saying, looking about herbicide agents just kind of in general instead of specifically what we need to prove our cases. The VA hired well, I guess it was probably the DoD originally, but then the VA hired a gentleman by the name of Alvin Young, and his whole purpose was to study Agent Orange, study where it was used, study herbicide agents, where they were used, what was going on with them, and he came up with this distinction without a difference of tactical herbicides and commercial herbicides. And Kerry, I'd love it if you just kind of talk a little bit about this, because this is going to be a place where VA comes right after you and tries to zing you.
I'm glad you brought this up. Everybody wants to know, well, why is VA denying my claim? Okay, this is at the heart of why VA is going to deny the claims, why they're denying lots of these as we speak, and will continue to deny them until they're forced otherwise. They believe, and a lot of them, I say believe, they earnestly believe that there is a difference between a tactical herbicide and a commercial herbicide, and that the regulation and statute mean or speak to or imply you have to be exposed to a tactical herbicide. Problem with that is it's not discussed in the regulation at all, the statute at all, or the legislative history at all. Because
as in there's no mention or distinction of tactical herbicide or commercial herbicide in the actual law.
Right. The law talks about herbicide agent. And even as the law was being formulated, nobody drew a distinction. Okay. Alvin Young drew a distinction, and
you're not going to get fired.
So Alvin Young was a doctor, he was an entomologist, he was Air Force, he's an Air Force retiree. He developed a lot of the spray nozzles, or the adjustments to the spray nozzles, so C-123s could get the spray patterns down the way they wanted. They were already using herbicides in Vietnam when he came on board in late 60s, early 70s, because he took an extension in school and got his PhD, and that went up until the middle of Vietnam or so. But he did become this expert, so to speak, on herbicides. He was an entomologist with a PhD, which is not just on herbicides, it's plants, bugs, and things like that. And during Vietnam and immediately after Vietnam, and for some time after Vietnam, he's got lots of papers out there he's written, probably why we can talk about him. He's out in the public sector. And in the original work, there's no distinction. Right? He even talks about Agent Blue was a commercial herbicide, Phytar 560 and Angel 30. I mean, he's got it in his own original paperwork what some of this stuff was. Roll the tape forward to about the time the chemical companies had to defend themselves in class action lawsuits, come the term tactical herbicide, right? And from my research, I've not seen it used prior to that. And well, that became a term that's survived the ages. I don't know, I can't tell you the years of those lawsuits exactly. But that term, tactical herbicide, filtered down into VA eventually, because VA was doing its research or whatever it's done a number of years ago on where these herbicides were. People started filing claims. for herbicide exposure in parts of the United States and Korean DMZ and Thailand. You know, VA wanted to know where all were these herbicides used. And so Avignon got a contract through DOD and the VA. And this was one of his papers was a 2006 report. This stuff had been around for a while, but he put this report together, and he spends the first quarter of it explaining, you know, hold the boat, you know, wait up, that there's a difference between these herbicides we're all talking about. You got to make sure the person was exposed to a tactical herbicide and not a commercial herbicide. And he would explain that, you know, nobody could obtain a tactical herbicide except for the ranch hand crews in Vietnam, and that nobody else, no bases around the country could obtain those kinds of herbicides, and that they weren't regulated through EPA or any of the agencies back then. A lot of that is not true. And so when you put it all together, once you've uncovered sort of the research, you'll see there really is no difference between these tactical herbicides and commercial herbicides. But this has filtered in VA for so long that they truly believe that that's the case. And that's why they're going to deny your claim in lots of circumstances, even when you show them that you were exposed. I've seen the board plenty of times say, all right, you were exposed to some of these herbicides. They come out right out and concede it in their board opinions, but then they deny service connection simply because it wasn't a tactical herbicide. Again, there is no such thing as a tactical herbicide. There are only herbicides used in a tactical environment. It doesn't change the chemical makeup. And their position, you know, just defies all common sense. All right, so they acknowledge that the main ingredient, that the active ingredients, you know, were the same, but somehow it's a different herbicide. It's more dangerous because it's tactical. Again, it's not. There's a lot, I go through a lot of stuff when we argue these cases about of how he's developed the mindset in VA. And in my opinion, he's misled VA. You know, I'm not saying he did it on purpose. I don't know that. But the facts as he's relayed them and the facts as VA believes them are not the facts on the ground. And one goal of this whole program, hopefully, is to get VA to understand that they have been misled on this subject. You know, for example, his reports talk about, well, we can't, you know, these herbicides weren't allowed to be used on bases in the United States. The exact opposite is the truth. Just give you one small example. They burned most of the Agent Orange at sea in '77 on a ship called the Vulcanus, something like that. It was an incinerator ship. They could not do the same thing with Agent Blue because it was 30+% arsenic. So this was an issue with burning that and putting it all in the air. They took a bunch of the barrels from Johnston Island, where they were storing them, and shipped them to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Okay, Alvin, then at the time, Captain Avignon, went there and supervised. I don't know if he supervised, but he was part of it. And they used those herbicides in the boneyard in the Aircraft Museum. And the civil engineer on that base, we have all the records of this. The civil engineer on that base said, well, they had been using that same herbicide, Agent Blue, since 1973. So for 4 years, up to that point, they were using Agent Blue. Somehow that base did not make it on Alvin Young's list of tactical herbicides, even though he was involved with spraying it on that base. And, you know, so you see things like that, it just starts peeling away. You start peeling away the layers. and you realize that all of this whole foundation is built on misunderstanding, you know, and so that's why VA is going to continue to deny this. That's why we, as a group, as a firm, have to be solid in our position that there's no difference between these tactical, you know, a tactical herbicide and a commercial herbicide. The difference is what kind of agent were you exposed to? And that's where we're going with this. I may have went off on a tangent. I didn't.
Well, no, I think that's important because when you pull it back to Fort Mac, if you look through the exhibits we sent, and I think this one's called it's called 2021 Full Fort Mac. If you look at that exhibit, you'll see that there are actually bills of lading. I don't know what else to call them, of barrels being sent to Vietnam of Tordon 101. And what Kerry was able to put together is that would be something that Dr. Young would have called a commercial herbicide used here, but he showed that not only that it went all the way over to Vietnam to be used, but that it was also called Agent White. And so it was, you know, it was a herbicide agent. And so just because they change the name, or they say when it's, you know, when it's named Tordon 101 here, and you know, eventually Agent White over there, you can't magically convert that to a non-toxic, non-harmful herbicide agent stateside to I call it deadly, or VA's admitted that it's deadly, tactical herbicide agent over in Vietnam. So if you look through the evidence, you will find that there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that basically discusses what you know, what we had to piece together bit by bit, you know, because it's a long trail that can kind of, you know, go backwards and go forwards, but the information in there on Vietnam is important, basically just to nail down that yes, this was the agent. You were exposed to herbicide agent, not some commercial herbicide thing. You were actually exposed to what was used in Vietnam and what is used on your base. So Alvin Young comes into this in that he just throws a real wrench in this process, and that he tries to make up this difference between what a tactical and commercial herbicide is. And you got to be prepared for that. Several of his reports are actually in the evidence we gave y'all, and it's good just reading them, frankly, to get inside this guy's head and understand how the VA is going to use it to deny you. So that was extremely important, and I'm glad we had a chance just to talk about that a second. Let's see, we had a couple other comments here. KY, if you are willing to send a copy of that yearbook, we would love to see it. First of all, to get, you know, see what you looked like when you're younger, but yeah, just to see what they put in there and what the base looked like back in your year. It'd be, you know, just for us, one more piece of evidence that we could hopefully help folks with. What was the other one I saw? This one was for Kerry Hojo 965. Kerry, the Army goes to basic training. We didn't have to go to boot camp. We already knew how to put our boots on. I'm not getting in the middle of that one. Stephen Mitchell.
Well, and if I can, they at least gave us real ammunition. We know they don't give the Army guys real ammunition. I mean, they're hurting themselves. But you are right. I'm kidding. That was a joke. You know, and thank you for correcting me. You know, we don't call our drill instructors drill sergeants. You get punched in the eyeball if you did. So I respect the distinction there.
All right, let's see. Stephen Mitchell, I did basic training at Fort Mac in '83, and since that time, my health has steadily declined. Autoimmune, migratory arthritis, and leaky gut. Could this have started at basic? What do you think, Kerry? I mean, yes, it could have, but what?
Yeah, that I don't know. I mean, that takes more medical knowledge than I've got. Migratory arthritis is not a pleasant experience, but it's also not one of the presumptive diseases. Can this stuff affect your immune system? Absolutely. You know, we prevail in claims that are not on the presumptive list quite regularly. on that type of stuff. So if you feel passionate about it, that you think it did, pursue a claim with it. They're going to look at it just for all the reasons we've talked about here and probably deny it, but they're also going to see the word arthritis and not realize we're really talking about a different form of arthritis than your typical degenerative arthritis. So anyway, that's probably all I can say about that one.
Okay. All right. So we run long on y'all. Don't want to go too long. There's a couple more here. Kevin Muller. I am married. If I start a claim for Fort Mac exposure, I know it would take years possibly. Can my spouse or dependent collect any of the back pay if the claim is won? So the answer is yes. If you have a spouse married over, well, you have dependents, but if you're married over a year or have dependents, that person can enter into the claim for you. What we tell our vets is that, you focus on your health, we're going to focus on your claim. So, if you put that in there, you keep it going, but, my preference would be to see that you survive that to get the benefits you deserve. But if you were to die, your spouse or if you have a dependent under the age of 18, they could, what is it called, Kerry? Why am I missing this? Substitute. They could substitute in and take your claim from there. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like you got a couple of folks having yearbooks. Anybody who's willing to share a copy, pages of, especially of the base, we'd love to see those. Again, it's all about this evidence record, just building this, sharing it, and just making it just that much harder for the VA to take it away.
And that goes for any other kind of records.
Yeah.
Anybody, if you have pictures that are incriminating, especially on Fort McClellan.
Not of you.
Not of you. Yeah. But or any reports that you come across, odds are, a lot of people send me stuff, and odds are I've seen it, but I still see things that I haven't seen. I know there's a lot of stuff out there that I haven't seen. Share it with us. We'll share it with everybody. Because the more these cases that get in front of the VA and the board and the court, the bigger chance we're going to have in opening this barrel of monkeys all the way. So numbers are on our side on this, in my opinion, but so is the evidence. So share it, we'll share it.
Okay, well, I think that's about all we got here. There's some banter back and forth, but I think that's mostly it. So folks, we appreciate you sitting along with us. I know we can be kind of long-winded sometimes on these last videos we had. We are clearly pretty excited, passionate about this issue. We would love to see it blow open. Kerry worked, frankly, in the VA and out of the VA to make sure the exposures that took place in Thailand really got brought to light today. I mean, the VA tried to slow play it and then pull it back. Kerry did a magnificent job just pushing case after case until now. The VA still denies some of those cases, but there's a lot more granted at the regional office. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, in that hopefully you guys are, you get to the point to where you can apply and the VA is like, we just don't want to fight this anymore. So that's what we're looking here to do. So anyway, hope you all have a great rest of your day, and